so that if you set a match on it, it's not going to light up, right? Those are some of the things that are not readily apparent to the eye. And then we don't have any surgery today, so we can walk in here, to see our operating theater. So
now take a look at this picture. If you look very closely in this theater, there are computers there, and I'm pretty sure they are very, very intelligent systems, software systems that can help these doctors to perform their operations. So the relevance of software engineering cuts across several fields, because many of you always assume, or some of us, there's this set of people that have this school of thought in Nigeria that they feel that anything ICT is just about making payments online, collecting money and all that. Computer science is interdisciplinary. Okay, write that down, take note of this important point. Computer science and programming is interdisciplinary. Now today everybody is talking about ChatGPT, this, that, blah blah. These are just large language models. All right, they've been existing for a long time. The transformer, the bed systems, but now after long years of training, it's now the contextual ability of these large language models. You can just call it a class, a class with multiple extensive classes. All right, now it is now coming, or it has now been improved to contextualize different context of several topics, cutting across virtually all spheres of human knowledge. All right, and it uses the internet too to also generate active and relevant content. Now the other thing you have to know about ChatGPT, okay, by the way, is that these large language models are constantly improving themselves. The more you give a query to the input box, and it responds based on the model sets that it has in its software algorithm, the better it becomes. Okay.
And interventions and so on, and also it's evolving like every day.
Yeah.
There's something like new every day. So to stay in line with like the other countries and so on, it needs like very like continuous effort to maintain that kind of like services and so on.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and you guys are doing an incredible job. So it's like an African Union thing. Thank you. When we expose our children early to possibilities, the sky becomes just the beginning starting point. Because what hobbles us often in Africa is we're not oftentimes trained or indoctrinated into believing in our own abilities.
Yes, indoctrination, concerning Africa's ability. That is something that I really want to emphatically make reference to. That indoctrination is so deep. I mean, you need to interact with some Nigerians or Africans to know how indoctrinated they are. Some of them feel that, talking in your natural accent, let's say you are an Igbo man or probably a Yoruba man, talking with their accent, your mother tongue accent, they feel it's a crime. So you see a lot of people trying to mimic American accents, they want to mimic British accents, one accent or the other, instead of being themselves. Okay, I think God knows why He created you to be yourself, all right, and not someone else. So you should be satisfied living in your skin. Don't make anybody feel that you're inferior, all right? Those kind of people are called bullies, and they end up being bullied themselves, and perhaps whatever it is that they get, all right? So be yourself, be confident of yourself, never feel you're inferior to anybody, all right? And just the sky is just the beginning, it's not just the limit. To everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Now today we're going to be looking at a very special video by, of course, this guy. This is Wode. He's a popular content creator, and I've actually reviewed one of his videos on this channel. So today we'll be looking at how a Nigerian built Caribbean first ever heart hospital in Jamaica, courtesy of his channel. Let us go over it and see, as usual, one or two things that we can learn for life.
I think is a major problem of the continent of Africa. One, leadership, and two, followership. So you have leaders that are imposed on many countries in Africa by outside interests. If they impose that leadership, then who do you think the leadership reports to? If we don't understand what citizenship really means, what the obligations and the responsibilities of citizenship, then we can't hold the leaders accountable. And the reason they don't even feel accountable is because you have no role in their emergence. So in order to break that chain, then we have to break through from other confounding variables that I said. And what are those other confounding variables? One, tribalism is a big problem. We have to recognize that when there is no food to eat, there is no food to eat for anyone. If there are no jobs, there are no jobs for anyone, right? It doesn't matter if your tribesman is a person who is stealing from you because you are still suffering.
I strongly believe that Africans are capable of managing their own affairs. I am a firm believer that Africans can build and develop their own countries.
Do you believe that an African is capable of managing his own affair? Its own affair?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But the problem is most Africans don't know their value. Most Africans don't appreciate who they are. If you know who you are, you will know that if you are an African, it's a blessing. And it's about time for us to unite, both Africans on the continent of Africa and Africans living in the diaspora. I am super happy of the video that I'm going to share today, and I want you all to do me a favor. Like this video, because it means a lot to me. But if you share this video, you're actually confirming what I'm saying, that an African can do everything that he believes in it.
My name is Ernest Chijioke Madu.
Chijioke Madu, that's certainly, that name sounds like southeastern Nigeria. Definitely.
Cardiologist by training, and founder, chairman, and CEO of the Heart Institute of the Caribbean and the HIC Heart Hospital here in Jamaica.
The hospital behind me is the only heart institute in the entire Caribbean, and it was founded by an African from the continent of Africa, which is Nigeria.
Well, the inspiration came from, the desire to solve a need in the society. We recognize that cardiovascular diseases are the number one cause of death and disability in most countries of the world, including in this region, the Caribbean, and if I dare say, in much of Africa. And yet, the services to take care of cardiovascular patients are very limited and sometimes non-existent. So we saw an opportunity, to solve that problem, and that is what inspired us to develop this facility.
Do I have Nigerians that watches my videos? Come on, leave your flag in the comment section. Is that even possible on YouTube?
Also very gratified because since we started in 2005, we have taken care of over 300,000 patients. And that's very gratifying, to see that in place. And if you see a lot of patients that we've taken care of, oftentimes some of the most vulnerable people that ordinarily would not have had access to this level of care. And it's very gratifying to see that.
come along with me as I introduce the owner and the founder of this hospital behind me. They're doing an incredible job, and it's about time for us to know more from him. Thank you. Should I say Your Excellency?
No.
Because
you, my brother.
you've done so much that the excellencies that we celebrate hardly do it on the continent and out of the continent. Amazing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Wow. This is the only heart institute in the entire Caribbean?
Yeah.
So, meaning before you established this, nothing like this existed?
No.
Oh my goodness. What really inspired you to do this in the Caribbean?
I went to medical school in Nigeria, right? So I graduated from medicine, then went to the United States for the training. Trained in medicine, trained in cardiology, trained in nuclear cardiology, and was on the faculty at major academic centers in the US. And then ultimately we started building healthcare businesses in the US. We've done several successful enterprises in the United States. So the visit to Jamaica was supposed to be a vacation. So we came on a vacation in Jamaica, I think it was sometime in 2003. And my position has always been that you have to build sustainable systems. And charity is not the answer, because when you give charity, when the benefactor decides not to give anymore, everything dies, and you have to develop the system. So coming on that, and I was coming on a vacation to Jamaica, and a family friend that we stayed with was having some cardiac symptoms, was short of breath. She was trying to get a cardiologist to see her, and she said the cardiologist appointment she was given was like 6 months. I said, no, that's not going to be helpful. Remember, I'm a cardiologist. I said, you need to see somebody, because she was short of breath. You need to see somebody immediately. I said, okay, let me call. Can you at least try to get an echocardiogram, which is a cardiac ultrasound? She called again. They say about 4 to 6 months. I called the place, tried to facilitate for her. I wasn't successful. Right? Ultimately, she went on and went to Miami to see a cardiologist, because that's the only place she could see one so quickly. And then went back, and then that thought just stayed with me. I said, Jamaica is not that far from the United States. It's just a stone throw away. I say, okay, the trip to Nigeria is about 12, 13 hours. Trip to Jamaica, maybe 2 hours. I'm here. We can solve this problem because we know how to do it, right? And we can solve it and make it available to people at a fraction of the cost in the United States. And that's when we started doing the feasibility study and started reaching out to local practitioners and cardiologists, met some nice, fantastic young cardiologists that had trained in the US and had come back, but were not deploying their skills properly. And they was asking questions, so where can you get this done? Nowhere. So a lot of things were not available, and we started putting a structure together. It was very clear to me at the time there was not much, and a lot of people, the ones who had the means, were going to Miami to get it done, or somewhere else in the United States, and the ones who didn't have the means just didn't have access. The problem with that is that you take away the money that doesn't exist and then give it to those who have more. And then if you take it away from the system, then those who can't afford it, there is no way to help them. And we wanted to do it, but we also wanted to do it in a way that is inclusive. And so we put the system in place and then created mechanisms to make sure that those who had the funds to go overseas can get it done here. We also made it possible that those from other Caribbean islands can come here and get it. And then we created a cross-subsidization model that allowed the very poor to benefit from the services, because we have cross-subsidization, tiered pricing. We have some people that get things for zero, right? And we have some people that pay full price. And that way we cover most of the people. And we introduce a membership program for a very small amount. You get the membership, and then you can get to see a cardiologist 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for 1 year. You can come to our emergency room at no cost, right? And anything else you need, you get it at a lower price. And you can see our fleet of ambulances. So it's a model that we think is very adaptable. It's a model that we think will work very well for most African countries. And we've helped some people, elsewhere, give them ideas of how to get these things, done. And this, we're very happy with the way the community has benefited from it.
So were the doctors that working here, are they all Jamaicans or?
You remember what, in Nigeria they call it Jaba. One of the biggest problems we have in the global south is that the Western countries devastate the health system by poaching talent. You can't blame the talent for moving, because if you don't have the enabling environment, if you don't have the infrastructure for them to stay, they will go. They will Japa, right?
If you don't understand what Japa is, just like leaving the country, yeah?
Right? So when you come to many developing countries, you have a deficit, because first of all, to start with, these training programs do not exist. I can still give back to Africa by doing what we have done in Jamaica. And by the way, we did another small facility in Nigeria, in Enugu, which we call Doc's Heart Center. And it was, for the longest time, the only private place where people can get a whole lot of services that did not exist in the southeastern region. Most times, the people in leadership may not even be aware of it, because when we talk about healthcare needs of a population, what are those healthcare needs, right? Majority of people alive today will suffer from cardiovascular disease at some point or the other in their life. So if you really want to cure poverty, you need to address cardiovascular diseases, because that is the #1 cause of death and disability. And that's why we felt that in a place like this, with a vibrant population, Jamaica, to me, is one of the most successful countries in the world. A country that has given the world several genres of music. Country that dominates field and track. It's only 3 million people. It's like a dot, but look at what they've accomplished. And so it was such a delight for us to have the opportunity to do something like this in Jamaica.
What is one unique thing about the institute?
For us, the most important thing is proof of concept, right? It shows that world-class cardiovascular care that people have equated to going to Western countries for can be provided to citizens in a developing country environment at a fraction of the cost. That's, to me, I call it democratization of healthcare. Showing that where you are born shouldn't determine whether you live or die. So this is our waiting room for outpatient cases. People come in, and then this is where they're processed. So we have, this is my colleague, Dr. Suleiman, interventional cardiologist. He's a consultant. We're going to take a minute. You can see that we have electronic medical records. But the electronic medical records is what allows us to keep a track of the patient visits and document their visits. We've had it since 2005 from when we opened. At the time we had electronic medical records, I'll tell you about 80% of practices in the United States did not have it at the time. So it's a very essential part of modern practice.
Now, by the way, as a software engineer, I believe you know that these hospitals cannot have these record systems without software developers. So one of the relevant areas or the relevant areas of expertise for you as a programmer is in this kind of industry, the health industry. The systems they use, the software they use, they are all built by developers, software developers. So please endeavor to learn a skill and become, relatable, highly relatable to today's working environment. This is very important.
Because it protects patients' confidentiality, because you don't have loose pieces of paper flying around. You also it makes it easier to track what is happening with the patient, that it has digital footprint. This is a nuclear lab. We use this lab to assess flow, into the muscles of the heart and determine the function of the heart and so on. It can help us determine whether somebody has had damage to the heart muscle. There's something that is very unique about this lab. Right now, there's a few of them around the Caribbean, but only very few will do cardiovascular imaging, because you need special training and skills to do that. We have a place there we call Hot Lab, where we get the nuclear generators, and then we produce the pharmaceuticals in there in order to do the examination on the patients. So why is this important? One of the most important causes of heart failure, one of the major causes of heart failure we're recognizing now, is something called cardiac amyloidosis. And guess what? It is more common in black people. And who are these black people? The people from Southwest Africa, Nigeria, Ghana, Ivory Coast, Togo, all of those.
Wow, this is very, very critical information that this man is giving. I mean, he's trying to give a very important point there, that cardiovascular issues of the heart is common in southwestern, or rather Western Africa. And this is very, very important. I think we should take a further good listen at what this doctor is saying.
And it is the same place that a lot of slaves were taken from. What does that mean? A lot of black people in America, a lot of black people in the Caribbean have heart failure secondary to cardiac amyloidosis. Until many years ago, it wasn't very easy to make that diagnosis, or even recognize as an important cause of heart failure. But now the technology exists, and that technology resides in this, and the expertise exists, and it resides here. So
you see, there's always the technology, and there's always the expertise. Behind every technology, there's an expertise, and there's also a scientific fact.
We are now working with Yale University. You're familiar with Yale, which is an Ivy League institution. HIC and Yale working together, developing the Cardiac Amyloidosis Center for the Caribbean, right here. Right?
The development,
right here at HIC. So we will be doing a lot of investigations, understanding how this disease happens in this community, understanding what best treatment, because the treatment is expensive, and we'll be working with the manufacturing pharmaceutical companies to make sure that that treatment is extended to our people, whether in the Caribbean or Africa. If I showed you the map of where the treatment currently exists, you will cry, because the whole of Africa and the Black Caribbean doesn't have access to treatment for cardiac amyloidosis, and yet we're the ones that have the disproportionate burden of the disease. But if you don't have a center like this, it will be impossible to even dream of having a treatment or diagnosis.
I guess HIC will be the new solution.
No, so this is our cardiac intensive care unit, and this is the only dedicated cardiac intensive care unit in the English-speaking Caribbean. Intensive care units, or ICU, but the general purpose ICU, so you can have patients with critical medical issues or surgical issues, but this is a dedicated cardiac intensive care unit. So people with critical cardiac issues, we see them here each room is lined with oxygen, medical air, and everything. And then we have the monitors. So the beds are special beds that can check the volume of fluid in the patient, and monitor what we call hemodynamics for patients with heart disease, right? And then you see each room is dedicated to each patient, and there are ventilators that we can run if we need to put patients on a breathing machine. The unique thing also that you will see is we have central monitoring station. You can see that. So when patients are in these rooms, the nurses can sit here and then see everything that is going on, or they can go into the room. The electronic medical record is also there, so there is cross communication going on. All these curtains are fire retardant curtains, right? So that if you set a match on it, it's not going to light up, right? Those are some of the things that are not readily apparent to the eye. And then we don't have any surgery today, so we can walk in here, to see our operating theater. So
now take a look at this picture. If you look very closely in this theater, there are computers there, and I'm pretty sure they are very, very intelligent systems, software systems that can help these doctors to perform their operations. So the relevance of software engineering cuts across several fields, because many of you always assume, or some of us, there's this set of people that have this school of thought in Nigeria that they feel that anything ICT is just about making payments online, collecting money and all that. Computer science is interdisciplinary. Okay, write that down, take note of this important point. Computer science and programming is interdisciplinary. Now today everybody is talking about ChatGPT, this, that, blah blah. These are just large language models. All right, they've been existing for a long time. The transformer, the bed systems, but now after long years of training, it's now the contextual ability of these large language models. You can just call it a class, a class with multiple extensible classes. All right, now it is now coming, or it has now been improved to contextualize different context of several topics, cutting across virtually all spheres of human knowledge. All right, and it uses the internet too to also generate active and relevant content. Now the other thing you have to know about ChatGPT, okay, by the way, is that these large language models are constantly improving themselves. The more you give a query to the input box, and it responds based on the model sets that it has in its software algorithm, the better it becomes. Okay, I'm going to be doing a whole video on some of these language models very soon, so make sure you are subscribed and you keep liking each of these videos, and you get updated. All right.
It seems you've done a lot of investment in the Caribbean, because what you've done is a lot of investment.
Yes.
But why you chose to do such an investment in the Caribbean?
So first of all, the need was great, right?
Yeah.
And we knew we could solve the problem. Why not? Right? That's number one. Number two, the Caribbean is me. We're all the same. Africa, Caribbean, is all the same family. It's like asking somebody, why did you decide to train your cousin in the university? It's the same blood. So staying in the United States, doing these things, having a lot of experience doing these things, knowing that I can do them, but also knowing at the time it wasn't feasible.
Yeah.
Like I told you, in 2004, 2005, I was making about 12 to 15 trips every year to Jamaica, because just get on a plane, come and then go. I couldn't make those number of trips to West Africa to get something like this because it takes a lot of dedication to get it done. But this is also my family.
That comes to my next question. Like, what has been the major challenge since you decided to establish this here in Jamaica?
So one major challenge is access to affordable capital, right? Because if I was operating in the United States and I needed to get this, there are 20 companies that will just give you a piece of paper to sign here and they deliver it tomorrow, and then they can pay over the next 100 years just, for a matter of saying. When you're doing something like this in the Caribbean, and I dare say for most of Africa, they want full payment before you can move it. And that limits your ability to scale because you need access to capital.
Yes, let me just talk briefly on this point he's making. Access to capital in Africa is actually an issue. I know, I can relate to this because as an entrepreneur, there's been challenges, but well, I just believe that with time, whatever it is you're doing in Africa, eventually a way will be paved and you're going to break even. All right, but the relatable thing here is that in countries like the US, Canada, and the like, they have access to funds. Once you have an idea, a thriving idea, and it's you are rolling it out, and you've made some milestones, you've covered some milestones. Before you know it, someone comes and just helps you with capital wise, so you can expand, and extend your services. So this what he's actually saying right now is of great importance.
Right? And you need access to affordable capital. So when you're talking to local banks, they also do not understand what you're trying to do. Second challenge is workforce, because you're going to have to hire people from all over the world, while the talent is running to much of Europe, and America. So if you're doing this in America, there are training programs in America that train people because it's not just doctors. So you're going to you'll need a cardiac surgeon, but you also need a cardiac anesthesiologist. So you have to go in the international marketplace. But you're now competing with the more economically vibrant societies. Right? And you're also competing with environments where people have been indoctrinated from childhood that's where the opportunity is.
That's a very powerful statement. Indoctrinating people or youths about a certain part of the world. That is something.
So their mindset, first of all, is I'm going to America, I'm going to UK.
And that's why we keep having erroneous movements and migrations. If you actually make a precise probability of how many of these people that are migrating actually have objectives and focus, like this man, like this heart surgeon now, you discover probably they are less than 5%. The rest just go there and fill the gaps, and they do menial jobs that are not even relevant to their profession, and they end up perhaps doing some hard labor that just truncates their lives. Okay, so what this doctor is saying right now is immensely important.
But you're saying, listen, I can give you a better quality of life in Jamaica, but that's not what his father and grandfather have been told. So you compete in that area. The second, and then as you're competing to bring that workforce.
And this also brings me to the aspect of narratives. Narratives need to be, retold. Some people still believe that people live in trees in Africa, that we live in jungles and the likes. Well, there's no need trying to prove yourself to those people, because eventually with time they'll get to understand that they are actually the relic of an old age and not Africa.
The same Western societies make it difficult for us, and I'll tell you why. Not only do they offer jobs at higher rates, which is fine. Competition is okay in business. When we talk about capital, we don't want you to give us a gift. We want access to capital. We want fair trade agreements, right? I don't want you to offer to sell me something for $100 when you're selling it to my competitor for $20, right? We want fair trade agreements. We want fair negotiations. We want respect, right? We don't want to be treated as charity. We're not charity. We are just making it affordable because we need to generate the resources to keep it sustainable, right? But then here is the unfair advantage, the unfair competition. We hire somebody from Ghana, and then they need a transit visa to come to Jamaica. And we have all the documentations. We're in existence more than 20 years. We're reputable. We have partnerships with international. We work with, various agencies. We work with TED. We work with GE. We work with, we have reputation that is unmatched. And you can go to Google and find who we are. But we give all documentations. And then people go to the British Embassy, for example, they deny them transit visa to come to Jamaica. They go to German Embassy, they deny them transit visa to come to Jamaica. And then you have to start looking for circuitous route that would cost you 3 times as much, right? So that creates an unfair competitive advantage, for us. Then we have problem with maintenance. So you buy big equipment, you may have warranty. When it's time for maintenance, to get people to fly in from the countries where you buy these things for, is not always easy.
Wow. How do you feel working in here?
Definitely, when I first came here like 5 years ago, it was a little bit challenging because for me it was a new experience, and also like the way I was trained and so on. It needed like a lot of things to be available here in Jamaica. I'm originally from Egypt. And this is like a developing country, and also here like the same, so we are struggling a little bit with resources. But when I came here and I met Dr. Madhu, and we started to talk and discuss how can we improve the services here and the things that we are offering to like Jamaican people and even like any overseas tourists or anybody. So he was like so understanding of that this is like a very dynamic service that we have in the cat lab and interventions and so on, and also it's evolving like every day. There's something like new every day. So to stay in line with like the other countries and so on, it needs like very like continuous effort to maintain that kind of like services and so on.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and you guys are doing an incredible job, So it's like an African Union thing. Thank you.
When we expose our children early to possibilities, the sky becomes just the beginning starting point. Because what hobbles us often in Africa is we're not oftentimes trained or indoctrinated into believing in our own abilities.
Yes, indoctrination, concerning Africa's ability. That is something that I really want to emphatically make reference to. That indoctrination is so deep. I mean, you need to interact with some Nigerians or Africans to know how indoctrinated they are. Some of them feel that, talking in your natural accent, okay, let's say you are an Igbo man or probably a Yoruba man, talking with their accent, your mother tongue accent, they feel it's a crime. So you see a lot of people trying to mimic American accents, they want to mimic British accents, one accent or the other, instead of being themselves. Okay, I think God knows why He created you to be yourself, all right, and not someone else. So you should be satisfied living in your skin. Don't make anybody feel that you're inferior, all right? Those kind of people are called bullies, and they end up being bullied themselves, and perhaps whatever it is that they get, all right? So be yourself, be confident of yourself, never feel you're inferior to anybody, all right? And just the sky is just the beginning, it's not just the limit, all right?
Our own capacity. Africa can rule the world. Many countries in Africa can be doing much better than they're doing. And that's one of the reasons I'm so impressed with Jamaica as a small island nation with very limited resources and what they have done with what they have. So one of my goals is to try to inspire and encourage new generation of Africans, Caribbeans. And one of the messages I'll be imparting to the young people is to believe in yourself. You can do this. I gave a lecture at Harvard University not long ago to a group of students. I made the same point. I want that point made across Africa, across the Caribbean. We don't have, we need to de-emphasize charity. We need to begin to more emphasize investment. We need to begin to emphasize trade. We just have to insist on fair trade agreements.
Do you believe that an African is capable of managing his own affair?
Its own affair?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Many of the most developed economies, if you peer deep, the key drivers are oftentimes Africans. Let's talk about Nigeria, for example. Every study after study shows Nigerians in America, Nigerian Americans, are the most educated immigrant group in the United States.
My problem is, if we know that, why not use that to advantage to build our own continent?
Well, so it goes into geopolitics, right? Who doesn't want you to know that? In whose interest is it that you don't know that? Right? That's why we're doing what we're doing. If you called the so-called multilateral agencies to do a feasibility study for you about a heart hospital in the Caribbean, I will guarantee you that many of them will tell you that it's not doable. Instead, they will encourage you to find a way to channel those patients to hospitals in Florida. Who benefits from that arrangement?
The United States.
Of course, you're taking resources from the places where it's limited and moving it to the places where theoretically they have excess, and you become further impoverished.
And let me also state here that the analogy that this doctor is giving is just an absolute fact. Take for instance the oil scarcity in Nigeria. Now Nigeria is known to be rich in crude oil, all right? They are very, very rich in crude oil. But oftentimes, in a year, or probably twice or more in a year, fuel just disappears from the pumps, from all the filling stations. Everybody starts, scattering around for fuel and all that. Are you getting it? So you begin to wonder that why is it that a country that is so rich in oil and gas is having scarcity of this same material? Why not the country have enough refineries to produce for the local population? Why should we be having a recurring decimal in this sector of the economy? Or is it not better to convert all the engines into electricals, so that the demand and the dependence on fuel will be reduced, and the cost of producing goods and services also will reduce. The inflation will be curtailed. All right, so these are areas that I think we should be looking at as far as Nigeria is concerned.
That is why we have to understand that when you're in a negotiation, you have to understand who are you negotiating for. Are you negotiating for the Caribbean? Are you negotiating for Africa? Or the person who's advising you, where is his interest? It starts from a core belief system that we have to first believe
In ourselves.
that we are capable and we can do these things because we have done it. We need to empower ourselves. We need to trade between each other. We need to grow our services. Internal capacity is what I call it. We need to develop everything in the Caribbean. Everything in Africa can be developed to the same level, right? China was once an impoverished nation. Nobody looks at China that way anymore.
Yep.
If you remain poor because you're depending on charity, everybody looks down at you. That's the reason why Africans are the only ones that have problems traveling the world. If you limit our people from traveling and engaging in meaningful business relationships and trade with the rest of the world, it's a disadvantage.
Yep.
So that's some friction that needs to be solved.
I want to say you're doing an amazing job in here in the Caribbean, and we're so proud of you, and we wish you all the best on this journey, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
For talking to us.
So that's just about all for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and please do remember to subscribe, turn on the bell notification, leave your comment. What do you think? Until next time, this is bye for now. Cheers and all the best.